encourage you
Recording in progress.
to if you can come on video, it's so much more fun. Storytelling is an interactive activity, and interactive in that it is the listening that calls forth the stories. Thank you. Hello, hello.
I'll be on in a minute.
Okay, fair enough. Wonderful. Well, I'm just going to go ahead and begin. And the way that I like to begin is by actually inviting you to close your eyes. And as you close your eyes, I invite you just to have a moment where you come all the way inside and you place all the attention on the back of your eyeballs. And you actually come into your whole body. And I invite you to place your hand on your heart, a hand on your belly, and just to take a moment to really think about, why are you here? What is calling you to the threshold of storytelling today? And it might be that there's a story inside of you that's ready to come out. Or it might be that the muse is knocking on your door. Or it might be that you are really wanting to carry forward the vision stories of our time and bring healing. Or perhaps you want to tell medicine stories. Or perhaps you're called to bring forth your wisdom stories. You know that there's something that you have to give, but you're not quite sure exactly how to give it. Or perhaps you're one of those few ones among us who's a cantadora, someone who's called to carry the old stories. I'm just inviting you into that wondering, that deep listening of why are you here? What calls you forward? And as you do that, as you come into this invitation, I'm also going to ask you one more question,
What calls you
which
forward?
is, what are you in service to? What are you in service to? It's a big question these times. Are you in service to love? Are you in service to connection? Are you in service to healing? You know, these are kind of the trends that I see in these spaces. But what is it that you're in service to? Is that will influence the stories that you carry, the stories that you tell. Okay, so I'm going to begin us with a quote. And welcome, welcome, welcome. And okay, here's our quote that we're going to start off with. We think we tell stories, but stories often tell us. They tell us to love or to hate, to see or be seen. And they tell us what to do, and we do it without questioning. The task of learning to be free requires learning to hear those stories, to question them, to pause and hear silence, to name them, and then become a storyteller. That quote is by Rebecca Solnit, and I like beginning with that quote because it actually really speaks to the progression that one goes through when becoming, what we're going to talk about today is what it is to become a sacred storyteller. And this is just a storyteller. And even woven into that is, what does it mean to be a conscious creator? Because there she is. She's saying you got to know where your stories come from. You've got to understand if you're going to choose to carry it. And then, and then we come into it. So here's what we're up to today. We're going to talk about the landscape of storytelling and look at it as a sacred art form. We're going to talk about what is a story, like what is it, you know, and how does it distinguish it from a sacred story. We'll also talk about the path of the conscious creator, and I'll show you different archetypes of different storytellers and how to see yourself within them. And all along the way, this is designed to be interactive. If you have questions, please, please, please go ahead and ask them. We're really lucky today. We've got a really small group, and so there's plenty of opportunity for interaction. And if you have a really hot button question that's just alive in your world as it relates to this, please put in the chat box, and I will try to pick it up as we go along and really make the most of our hour together. Okay. A little bit about me. I I grew up on land that had a field with very, very tall grass, and I had a relationship with that field through the spring, through the summer, through the winter. It was very cold in the winters where I grew up, and in the summertime, spring was this absolute gift. We actually had a fifth season where I grew up. It was called mud season. And after mud season came the aliveness, and it's where we discovered all the things that were lost and broken and died in the wintertime. It's when we found the old beings, all kinds of things. But in the spring, all the blooming that happened, all the flowering. And I just fell in love with those flowers, and it was the hardest part when they were mowed down because it was a wild field. I grew up on a farm in Vermont. And I came by my experience with storytelling as honestly as one can. I came up with it through a lot of time wandering in the fields of that farm, hanging out with trees, hanging out with rivers, and discovering and kind of connecting with this ancient old craft of listening to earth before I knew what it was. I eventually found my way into storytelling, and what I really understood about stories was that I first met them as saviors. They really saved my life. I ended up moving around a lot between Vermont, Virginia, New York City. I was often the new kid in town. I don't know if you guys have ever gotten to be the new kid. Yes. Okay. You know, it's not an easy gig. It's not an easy road to be the new kid in town, especially every year. And books saved my life. They were my escape. You know, they were my like way out of that pain zone and way into this whole other world. And it really gave me a place to go on great adventures and learn all different kinds of wonderful things. I also learned storytelling as a way to process pain when my best friend from high school committed suicide. I didn't know what to do with it. Nobody else knew what to do with it. And I went to that place, that home that I had found that had been my place of respite, which was story. And I wrote my way through and out of that pain. And that's where I really learned the responsibility of what you put out comes back, because that play ended up landing at a storytelling festival. I got to see it on the stage. And then I learned the responsibility of then holding other people's stories. I ended up learning the profession of storytelling and theater when I studied at Sandy Meisner School at Neighborhood Playhouse in New York City. I had really kind of amazing parents who said, don't waste your time and our money on going to college if all you want to do is acting. So I went to acting school, and then I just really wanted to go to college. And then I and studying experiential education, environmental education through performance, and wilderness leadership. And in that time, I was reconnected with my love of the wilderness and ended up working as a wilderness guide for 7 years with youth at risk. And I reconnected with understanding the power of that place as a source of healing, where I started to see young people doing all kinds of healing that there's no way I would have the skill at that point to facilitate. So I really began to have that a deeply entrenched um, engagement, partnership with the land. I eventually ended up getting a master's in social work because I was really actually very, very attached to this idea of this race to save the planet. I say that because I don't use those terms anymore. And I really believed in my heart of heart that people couldn't save an earth if they couldn't save themselves. Now I'm more like I think we can slow to restore and heal the planet. And I still deeply believe that we can't bring healing to the planet if we don't know how to bring healing to ourselves and to our immediate communities. I eventually found my way onto my own true unique path, which really wove together the social justice, environmental justice, and the arts, and started my own theater company called the Performance Initiative, which is all about utilizing the arts for social change, and eventually ended up coming into creating a modality called Myth, Magic, and Medicine, which is all about working with story as a tool for healing and transformation. We've gone on to create massive rituals with 200 people where we take big social issues and look at what does it mean to come into a collective and work with the deepest aspect of connection to story, to ourselves, and to each other, and come into that healing field. So that's a little bit of the perspective that I join you with today. And so let's kind of jump into this little piece about language. Language. Hawaiians believe that words are so powerful that they can raise enough energy, that words can raise enough energy to slow the world or set it into motion. If you ever have a chance to see the hula, not the tourist, kind of sexualized hula, but like real hula, it's an embodied prayer. And they understand their words can call the water. The Maori say that the words don't describe a thing, that they are the thing. The Sicilians say that they believe that words can poke holes in the universe. I always think about that when I get a little angry and realize that it can't ever be undone, what is said. The Australians say that the stories of the past must be sung to the present in order for the future to exist. And all the ancient religions agree that the world was sung, spoken, and chanted into existence. I would like to pause right there and just say that again, just because it's kind of a big deal, this one. I feel like it's a key to our humans' existence on this planet. Like, what do we have to give? That all the ancient religions agree that the world was sung, spoken, and chanted into existence. Abracadabra, from ancient Aromatic mysticism. I create as I speak. So it's a big responsibility once we understand this. And for a while, I really focused on humans. Humans. It's like, here we are. We're speaking the world into being. How will we use our words? How will we speak about the future? But it's also the birds that are speaking our world into being through their harmony. It's the whales who are singing our world into being. We're in this moment. It's such a profound, what a moment, that we all chose to be here on this earth. If you have that worldview, what a moment. And I often consider this in terms of, I think the earth is going to be fine. It's gone through a lot of change before. There's no debate that humans are having a massive impact and influence on this planet. I think we're very innovative. I think that there will be some humans that will figure out how to navigate the changes. Probably not all, but plenty. I think what's really at stake is our humanity. How will we live with ourselves if we don't make space for all these other beings to be with us? How will the loneliness ever get healed if we can't be in companionship and connection with the natural world? So these are the things that we tend to when we kind of think about story, and how is story related to our humanity and to the earth and to all these things. So we're going to get into that. So let's get into it in a collective conversation. What is it? What is a story? You can speak it out loud. You can put it in the chat box. This is just an opportunity for you to wonder out loud together. What is a story? There's no wrong answer. It's kind of amazing that way.
A conversation between creators?
A conversation between creators. Oh, I like that. Talk more about that. I've never heard a description like that before.
Unmute wasn't working. um, I believe if a story is being told between two people and two people are going back and forth, they're creating something out of the universe. They're using their words to create a pathway forward. So that's, yes.
Love it. I often think of you just took us way out there. Why be simple when you can go right to what you're doing? So right, it happens between two people, and a story happens between two people, even if both people aren't speaking. You're talking about them speaking to each other, right? We have a shared story. If we, like, a lot of us are in a shared story, but you're also talking about some other kind of amazing things where it's like I always think about the Rainbow Bridge. Stories connect us through the heart. You know, there's this magic that happens when we tell a story. I can tell you a story right now. Once upon a time, a long, long time ago, at the very bottom of the ocean, lived this woman. And she had this long blonde hair that trailed behind her, and these little sparkles came off. Okay, how many of you saw that image? Okay, so we time traveled, we location traveled, we reality bended, We had all these different kinds of things. And what was happening is that the left lobe of my brain was going beep, 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 and I started generating that image. And but the same part of your brain also activated as you generated that image. When we're talking about who has power and influence in the world, it's our storytellers, right? We can plant images inside of other people's brains with the mere use of our words. But it's a trick. It's a total trick. And this is where it's kind of amazing. And I feel like it's a magician's trick because it appears like the storyteller has the power. But really, it's the person who's listening. I'm a gardener. I love to garden. And was out there in the soil this morning, and I was reminded once again that if I don't put the time and energy to make sure that the soil is happy and healthy and strong, the seeds that I plant will not flourish and grow. And the same thing as listeners, we have this capacity, like we get to choose what will take seed in our consciousness if we're really conscious about it. And so we're going to talk more about how do you get to have your sacred storytelling goggles so that you can notice and see all the stories and then just have great discernment about which ones you allow to live inside of you. So anything else in terms of what a story is? What is a story? Connection connects us.
I think it's creating new worlds.
It's creating new worlds.
It's in the sense I say that you can tell like you just did now. You told us a story. Well, you just created a world for us, a world that I may never have considered.
Yeah.
Or when we read a book or see a movie, we're brought into someone else's world that we may never ever have would never have been able to come up with on our own.
Yeah.
So it's just like expanding our awareness.
Yeah. It's world building. World building. Yeah, absolutely. And right, we get to come into other people's worlds. Would you? Yes? Oops, you're muted.
Following up on what Katrine just said, I think that in a way, telling a story is an act of radical hospitality. Because you're really inviting someone into that new world, as has been described. And it just seems that storyteller as host and acts of hospitality. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. It's a radical act of hospitality, and I would even go so far. It's a radical act of love.
Mm-hmm.
It's a radical act of love and generosity. And what I understand is that it's like walking onto the path of becoming an elder. It's saying, I have something to give.
Mm.
It's worth my life force. And how I stand in my body and knowing my value is as much a gift to you as it is in giving the actual story, because it gives you permission to say, and you too are of value and have a gift to give. So it's a kind of a multi-dimensional thing that's happening when we really stand in the gift of our storytellers and stand in the gift of what we have. And it's a generative piece. It also, when we really enter into the kind of the mystic aspects of it, it's entering into the giving and receiving cycle of life. So when we're in a sacred storyteller, and this is a distinction, we are giving a gift. This is different than marketing, okay? A lot of people say, Leah, would you come over and help us, sell this thing? And I'm like, that's just not my thing. I really respect that other people do that. Because what that's doing is it's taking, right? I'm going to plant the seed of fear in you or the seed of lack, and then I'm going to take. And I'm using this mechanism. It smells like a story, looks like a story, acts like a story, but it's kind of a clone. It isn't a story. So I really want to invite you to think about when you come into the spectrum of being in relationship to different kinds of stories, notice how you feel. You know, when you watch people perform or talk story, do you feel more alive? Do you feel inspired? Do you feel invigorated? Do you say, oh, I want to get up tomorrow morning extra early and do extra push-ups and sit-ups and extra yoga or swimming or whatever it is because I feel so alive and I want to be my best version? Or after watching that film or whatever, do I feel a little dead inside and that maybe people should get off the planet? You know, I really want to encourage you to think about how you feel after watching the television shows that you're watching. Are they planting, are they fulfilling you and nourishing you, or are they kind of sucking out your life force? Um, so I'm going to come back a little bit. Another way of talking about a story is that it's an operating system. And I'm using the language of technology because humans have always referred to themselves and referenced the latest technology. And so it's an operating system where we learn our values, our belief systems, and what we believe is possible. There's another piece of storytelling, which is like that's the unpoetic version, right? If we want to go poetic, we can say that it's a library of our consciousness, it's a library of the soul. And that when you come and visit in the land of story, you get to actually, understand a time and a place. So to really understand a story, you actually have to go back and you have to understand what could they say, what could they not say, to truly understand the story. You have to understand the language to truly understand that story. You have to understand, they're evolutionary. So stories in that way should be allowed to change and shift and transform according to the times that they're living in. Think of them just like a tree. We want our trees to grow up and strong and to fruit and provide shade. We don't want it to stay a sapling. So always question when stories are being repeated, especially old stories, if they're always being told in the same way, if they're not allowed to grow and evolve. Another piece about a story that I want to speak to, and this is really critical in our times, because it's like, gosh, how do we maneuver through these times of the information era? And there's so many stories that are flying about. One of the basic premises of a story, as told to me by Tyson Yakamura, which is that stories are from the earth. Okay, you know when a story because it comes from a place. So another way of we can think about this in a couple of different ways. Whereas Sean Kane says that what is a myth, but the earth speaking out loud. I'm talking about two different kinds of things. But when we talk about, especially when we hear so many different things, but they're not placed in location. We don't know where they come from. It's worthy. It's like again, we're putting on our sacred story. Telling goggles, how do I know what to listen to? How do I know what to understand? What story am I going to live in? When we're being, there's so much competition for us to live in different stories. So these are a couple just little ways for you to kind of maneuver through these times. So what is a sacred story? What makes it a sacred story?
So maybe it's a story that is related to our more the ephemeral side of our being. It's about our beingness as opposed to the mundane world.
Okay. So you're speaking, I'm hearing you speak about the unseen world, that for which we have reverence for, the presence of awe. Okay. Any other ideas about what makes a story sacred?
Perhaps it's a story that is extremely close to our heart, to our being, and we're choosing to share it, and that gift is therefore sacred.
Mm. Right. So this act of sharing, there's something sacred in the act of sharing and how we're doing it, which you talked a lot about. Right, which comes with intention. What intention am I coming with? What am I in service to? Which was that very first question. Anything else?
Just my understanding is that the word sacred means set apart. And I just love that quality of it, you know.
So one of the ways that I understand sacred is in the use of it is we're saying, I see the life in you. I see the divinity in you. I see, right, that which is not of everyday life. I see the unseen in you. And I honor that. And so when we're saying that about a story, we're saying, oh, I see the unseen life in you. I see the spirit in you. So I think of stories as having life inside of them. So when I'm a sacred storyteller, I'm standing in this wild collaboration with the unseen world. And that those stories that unseen world can live through the stories. So that means in what language will we employ for this? You know, some say that it's the ancestors speaking out loud. Some will say that it's the muse that's speaking through, or inspiration, or life force, or or the earth. Whatever your language is for that unseen world. That to me is one of the most profound aspects of coming into relationship with sacred stories. That you can come into relationship with wisdom, healing, intention, and guidance like no other form that I've ever connected to. To me, it's almost like the direct key to the divine. And so, a lot of times, especially in this world, there's so much, there's such a yearning for it to be part of this, healing revolution that's happening. And it's coming through so many different ways. And I think one of the most ancient ways is people will go to religion and they will come through that as a way of coming into connection with the divine. And others are going more and more to plant medicines as a way to relate with the unseen world. And I understand a story as being one of the keys to the unseen dimensions. And it gives us access to that kind of guidance and inspiration. But what it requires is to ask something of you. It's saying, okay, this is a magnificent body, but it is this extraordinary tool, and in order I have to learn how to use the tool, you know. And I have to make sure that I keep the tool really clean and that my channels are activated so that I can listen and hear and that I know how to open the channel. And so really one of the expertise that you're doing in terms of becoming a storyteller, especially a sacred storyteller, is learning how to clean your house. You got to clean the house. You got to clean channel, which means that where are you in relationship to life? Where are you in relationship to your relationships? Where are you in relationship to forgiveness, to betrayals, to resentments? All these things that can take up all this noise. Because if you got a dirty house, a messy house, and there's a lot of static bouncing around, then you don't have that clear, earphone up to be able to hear and receive the inspiration. So, I was just thinking about this, the other day as that metaphor, and I've had a little situation with a housemate for a while. And it's just taking up so much space in my head. It's like how to handle it in a good way, boundaries, blah, 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 not pleasing everybody. All the things that, I got to do, right? And the other day I was like, oh my God, how many ideas have gone by? How many new concepts for this book that I'm working on were missed because this thing was banging around my head, because I had, I had to do some sweeping, and making sure that the channel is clear and clean. So I really think it's kind of an amazing gift when you really say yes to do this kind of work. It means that you really have to be in integrity with your soul, and it keeps you, it keeps you on your toes. Okay, so when we talk about what is a story and all of this, I want to talk to you a little bit about. We talked about this, but I'm just going to show you just because I can. It's kind of fun. We made some diagrams, and I'll show them to you. And so now we're going to really get into it in terms of, okay, so we talked about what does story do, you know? We talked about, right, it places you onto the path of eldership, when we really come into it from a place of, why am I telling a story? Why do I believe that my voice is worthy of being heard? I know it's kind of a crazy thing. I don't think everyone has to tend to that. I think a lot of women do. But I think that you got to clean house and get what's in the way of you really giving your gift and showing up and saying, yes, I have something to give. And sometimes one of the greatest gifts you have to give are the mistakes that you made. or the things that were rough and tumble moments in your life. I often think of the Me Too movement, and when you started hearing those stories, so many of them were so similar. And if more women had been sharing their stories, I wonder if less women would have had to repeat the same experiences. So it's like really understanding that your voice matters, that your experience matters, especially the tough ones, and we can give them as gifts and guidance. They create belonging. Stories, it's like when I'm willing to share something and be intimate about the truth of what's happening in me, then that piece that also lives in you comes alive. I was just at a bat mitzvah this weekend, and the rabbi said the most beautiful thing to this young girl. He said, "On this day, you are a portal for all of us to see ourselves through you." And to me, that's very much what storytelling is. I mean, that happens in all rituals, but also as you come into a story, you give people the opportunity to see where they're living in their consciousness. And it's really this, it's like they call it the temple, right? And we all get to go in, we get to go into this very private place inside of our consciousness while sharing this outward story. And no one's going to judge you for what's going on in your mind. But you've got a whole show going on while hearing the story. And you're seeing this in the other person. And you have this opportunity to create extraordinary belonging and connection and healing. Because when we tell the deepest parts of our stories, when we get access to the grief, when we get access to the anger, when we give access to the rage, when we give access to the joy, as storytellers, when we do that, then we give those who are with us also access to their own same feelings. We talked about the bridges, talked about the love, talked about the connection. It's all there. So um, when you're a storyteller, there's some it's kind of this wild alchemical thing that you're doing, where you are, as I spoke before, in deep relationship to yourself and this sacred tool. You're in relationship to the story, right? The spirit of the story. How does it want to live through you? You're in relationship to the audience. And if there's anything I know, is that the audience, it's the listening that truly calls out the depth of the story. I've taught this class many, many different times, and it's pretty much the same material, but I always say different things. And I can say it's really based on the listening. It's based on who's in the room and what is inside them that's calling something out, because we're in this relationship together. I one time told a story called Dragon Love, and I've told it a bunch of times, and it's about this young girl who's off on her heroine's journey, and this dragon falls in love with her. And this was not her plan. And he saves her life, and she's kind of annoyed. And she's like, "Well, what do you want in return? Like, what do you want?" And he's like, "I'd love a kiss." And she's appalled. She's so grossed out. She's just like, that was definitely not going to happen. And when I told this story, I told it as part of an initiation ceremony. And Gloria, this extraordinary woman, brought her then 16-year-old daughter and all of her friends for her birthday. And as I told this story, and I came to that part of the scene, all of a sudden she started to like almost gag in repulsion. She just like went on and on about how gross that request was and all this stuff. And afterwards, I was really thinking about, I was like, gosh, that part of the scene of the story had never come alive like that before. And all I could think about and wonder about is, did those girls need to see what cruelty looked like? It was like, I was just so curious. I was like, why did the character show up so mean? And so that's kind of the amazing thing. We're coming into this deep relationship when being really authentic with how the story wants to live through us, and then being humble enough to allow it to express in the way that it most desires. We're in relationship to the times that we're living in. I talked a little bit about stories can change and should change. There's different kinds of stories. I want to honor that. Some stories, from different cultures have to be repeated by the exact word for word for word, these 3-day stories. And if the storyteller misses one word, they have to stop and start over again, because those stories, in order for life to continue, have to be told exactly. That's a different kind of story. These ones. And then, of course, relationship to the place that you're telling. You have to be in relationship to your natural environment. There's a couple of different kinds of stories, and these are storytelling archetypes. So who are we when we stand as storyteller? I didn't put the comedian on here, which is, I don't know why I've never thought of that, but that's not my medicine probably. But so it's like we've got the midwife. This is someone who is really helping the news story birth the news stories of our time. They're catching the news stories. There's the mentor who's going to be telling teaching stories. There's the alchemist who's doing that kind of work where they're taking the old stories and they're helping heal them, and they're bringing in and they're finding where they want to be changing, and how do we bring them into a new form. There's the healer, and we're actually getting ready to do medicine stories, which I'll tell you a little bit about. And these are stories that are designed just for healing. They're not even, they can be told to others, but in their design and structure, they're designed for you. There's the wisdom keeper, and this story is these are the people who are carrying those old stories forward. There's the visionary. There's not a lot of people that are telling these stories. We're hearing a lot of horror stories about the future, but those aren't vision stories. Vision stories have a creative place where I can live inside of them. So we need more visionaries. There's the archaeologist, which is going around and digging up and finding the old stories. So many of our old stories are being lost right now as more and more languages are getting lost. And I had this moment the other day about, I was in Peru last month, Ecuador, and I was speaking to a fellow and trying to collect as many old stories as I could get. And it's the consumerist language. I was trying to collect, it's like, how many can I witness? And he was saying that his grandmother spoke a language. Well, she spoke, but there was another village over where there was a grandmother who nobody spoke her language anymore. And I was just, it really struck me that I was like, wow, all of her stories are going to be lost when she dies. Like, they're all just gone. And then I have this moment of understanding what westernized, disconnected perspective that was. That story was originally gathered from the earth. It was originally caught by someone at some time that did some kind of act of deep listening. And then that became stronger and stronger as more and more people carried it. And then when she dies and her bones are returned to the earth, those stories will go right back to where they came from. But they won't be caught again unless there are people there who know how to listen and know how to catch a story. And so that's why I really believe in my heart of hearts that this could be some of the great work of our time, remembering how to listen, remembering how to catch stories, because all the wisdom and all the guidance that we need to make it through these times, I believe, can live in our stories.
Can I just say something?
Yes, please.
I mean, I don't know if this is true, but I suspect that the really important stories are those that are universal, those that come from that are at the core of all cultures.
Yeah.
So those are the ones that we don't want to be lost. And I don't think they can be lost.
Yeah. That sounds like a wisdom piece if I've ever heard one. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So, in terms of this, what is the journey of a sacred storyteller? I'm gonna go through this fairly quickly. We're not gonna go through all the details, but you want to court the muse. A lot of times they'll say, like, create an altar, feed the land, feed the unseen world. Give them flowers and candles and incense and crystals, or the things that matter, or the things that have lived in your ancestry. Anything where you're saying, I want to make a place for you in my life, and you make it physical. You create the path to psychic silence, where you really do the good work of learning how to clear your mind, clear your heart, come into alignment. I have an entire guidebook on creating psychic silence, if that's your thing. You gotta name, claim, and remove your barriers. And that's part of the journey, and that's kind of part of the fun too. It's like, okay, I've come to think of like barriers now as like soul strengtheners. Where like when you come up against a big barrier, it's either because really that path is no longer open to you, and you can either be like, pardon me, a dumb bird that keeps hitting the mirror. Do you guys have those in your neighborhood? We have, yeah. Okay. We have I don't mean to call it a dumb bird, but it's got a small brain, and it keeps hitting the same car window. It goes there every day and hits it over and over and over again. I'm like, it's never going to move. So it's like, hopefully you're not going to be, hopefully you don't have to do that, and you'll get the hint if there's really no path for you. But other barriers, I really believe, are designed to really strengthen you, because they're an initiation, and meeting them is an initiation. And when we actually meet those initiations, they will make us stronger and more prepared to be on the other side. And so when we come into this path of what it is to be a sacred storyteller, and what it is to stand as elder, what it is to stand with confidence to give our gifts because we know our true value, inherently you're going to come up with some barriers, some old stories. And so we get to meet those and play with them and maneuver around them. You got to look behind, know your old stories, know where you came from, and you look within to the stories that created you. And then, and really understand, you really need to understand your story before you start carrying other stories. I really believe that's true, because you'll bring yourself to all those stories. And then we've talked about different kinds of story archetypes and the power of what it is to stand in your gift. And then, there's different schools of thought, and there's a really good school of thought of you develop your craft, and then once your craft is developed, then you get the freedom to explore with it. I feel like I've seen so many beautiful, profound, creative people shut down too early because there was too much of a demand on craft and not enough on really being able to access their channel as a creative. And so that's actually one of the places where we start, is how to really access your creative channel so you can come into your true voice. Then we come into craft. I think a really important part is listening for what's needed from your times and understanding that, and then alchemizing your stories into medicine. And that's what we're going to be doing this Saturday. So what I'll share is that is the bulk of our class for today. And for those of you who feel complete, and alive in curiosity, I'll end with a quote and send you on your way. And for those of you who are curious and about what it is to become a sacred storyteller in your own world, I'm going to continue on and share a little bit about a wisdom stories class that's happening this Saturday. And we have a medicine stories class that's coming up in next month. And then we also have a facilitator training program. So those are the different kinds of things that I'll do some brief introductions about. Okay. So this Saturday, I'm doing a one-day class, and it's called Wisdom Stories. We're meeting from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., I believe, Pacific Standard Time. If you are in the LA region, I will be hosting, we're going to do a hybrid class where you can come in line and you can come offline, and it's fulfilling both ways. It's really designed to go together. And this is really, you'll go through the entire journey and you'll get to go learn how to, we'll only work on telling one story, and you'll get to really play with a moment in your life where life initiated you. So I'm already doing a reframe. So you get to take a moment that kind of sucked. It could have been a health crisis. It could have been when you lost something. It could have been when you didn't get to have control over something. It could have been a divorce or a broken heart. And we're going to go in there, and we're going to, in the combination of doing earth-based rituals, in the combination of doing creativity exercises that include drawing and play, we're going to go in there and we're going to look at what was the initiation of your soul. So we're going to come out and we're going to take a really big story. What was the journey of your soul in this experience? The human version. What was the soul version? We're going to come out, we're going to take a journey and go into the mythic dimension, and then we're going to come back with a wisdom story, so that you tell the story from another perspective. You tell the story having harvested all of the gifts, all the gems that live within it. So that is this Saturday, and I can place a link in our chat box right now for you if you're interested. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Are there any questions about that? Okay. So the other, I can't tell if there's a question there or not, sorry.
Leah,
Yes.
it's Harriet. Would you mention something about the facilitators program?
I will. I can, If you're interested, I can actually even show you the PowerPoint and just walk through the whole thing with you.
Mhm.
And that literally is what I was going to do next, is let me show you the facilitator training program. So a little bit is that I've been teaching online and in person for over 4 years. And in the process of that, I began to notice that there's just a natural evolution in terms of there's this modality of working with story as a tool for healing. And so much of the work of our time is how do we facilitate these spaces where people can really come in and emerge. And so the evolution of the school has begun to now have a certification program in facilitation. And so let me pull that up for you. And wait 1 second. What I will say is that if you're so curious, and Wisdom Stories is part of a year-long program. And so if you are feeling the bug, you can actually jump on in, and I'm not going to go so much into that, but you can see it on the website. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through this program, and this I'm just so tickled by this program. So a little bit about my experience, as I mentioned, is that um, a lot of my group process experience was initially learned in the theater. Like, how do you produce, how do you get big things done, and how do you work in small groups and get it effectively done? And then my real skill and expertise in leadership came from while studying outdoor adventure leadership and wilderness leadership and leading groups at Outward Bound for many years, and then going on to do other things in that profession like that. And so lots where I'm not being very articulate right now. I just quit coffee today. So but that's where a lot of this, where the knowledge base comes from. So what we're doing, who this is designed for, is while we're using the modality of working with story as the foundation, it can be applied everywhere. So like I said, it's like I learned leadership in the theater. I learned leadership while being a wilderness guide, while also like leading retreats, while facilitating a school, while doing race relations dialogue, while doing PR media at the UN climate talks. It's like it shows up in all aspects of our lives. And so what this is designed for is to really help people who want to hold small groups, and who, if you want to be leading retreats, if you are taking this into the office, into the business environment, rites of passage work, if you want to do creative productions, want to get much better at that, or in classrooms. Or if you're looking at in your own work world, you are beginning to evolve to want to hold small groups, and you really want mastery and experience so that you can manage holding small groups during these times. And I will tell you, everything that's happening out there in the world will happen in here in your small groups. So it is a time when our facilitators are really being called to action to really have exceptional skill, because we're learning that we have a lot to learn about how to be together. In this 8-month program, you're going to learn how to develop your unique style of leadership. So everyone has their own different gifts. This will be like, what's your medicine? What's your facilitation style? You're going to get a lot of direct hands-on practice facilitating, and you'll get to facilitate 3 different kinds of ways. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. You'll learn how to call out and lead emergent creative process within your group. So that can be in a creative process, but that can also be if you step into a class or a group today after such violent actions that happened yesterday. There's no way that most people can get into doing the work without addressing what's alive in our field. So how can you have the skill base to really be able to read your group and understand what's necessary and needed and be alive with the moment? How do you develop strong boundaries, clarity of communication, and trust within a group? How do you have space to develop your own unique process, your voice? And you'll also develop the skills to be present and co-lead in a group process. And you're going to get a lot of experience in giving feedback, and also a lot of experience in receiving feedback. For me, I think one of the most helpful things, and this is why this is an advanced class, when I do a lot of creative classes, it's really a space that's designed to absolutely support the creative process emerging. In a class like this is really helped. This is designed for you to really be able to see and work with how do you get to be the absolute best version of yourself as a facilitator. So we're going to help you see the parts that need to be developed and worked on, and then you'll have opportunities to practice. Um, so again, this whole piece of really getting a lot of direct feedback about what you're doing that's really, really working and supportive and bringing out people's best, and also where are the parts that still need to be developed. You'll get to really master your communication skills. And at the center of this whole piece is really aligning to your broader purpose so that you're really clear about the different groups that you'll be working with. Three different kinds of groups that you're going to work with. You'll lead one solo event, which is your own content and materials, something that you're just absolutely passionate about. You'll get to co-lead with someone on a topic that the two of you determine and lead us through an experience. And then you'll also get an opportunity to facilitate the material for the School for Sacred Storytelling if a certification is something that you want. And those who get certified and then go through a review process will be considered to be facilitators at the school, which is a paid gig. One of the opportunities to get hands-on experience is through these story ceremonies, and you can choose one or two. You can choose to do a story ceremony, or you can choose to come into one of the classes. That's kind of cool. You get a class as well. You also get to collaborate and lead in partnership. Okay, I already talked about this. Got it. And then in the school. So, in terms of what we're covering, our first module is really about how do you develop agreements and trust in a group. You'll talk about emergent creative process, which I already just spoke to. You'll get to learn and speak to what is it to create ceremony and ritual in spaces and holding a field. And it's funny, it's like, I want to say, you can do this in the super oovy groovy woo woo world that are like really grounded in that, but I've also done that while leading a presentation at Google. It's like, how do you create a sacred space so that what you are doing can be held in such a way, no matter where you are, while speaking the language of those that you're working with.
Yeah,
Yes.
sorry. How do you do something like module one, developing agreement and trust exercises when you're online?
You just do it online. So we're not doing trust
Okay.
falls. It's like that we
So,
won't be doing, but there are plenty of ways that we can develop relationship and trust through communication.
like in small groups, I guess, in the
Yes.
Zoom small group kind of thing. Okay.
Almost everything is done in small groups. Yeah. Um, Thank you, and ask questions, ask lots of questions as we go along. You'll be learning about the different stages of groups, which is forming, norming, storming, and performing. And this is actually one of the key critical parts that I really feel like a lot of facilitators that don't get if they don't have a little bit more practice, which is that every group should feel so strong and safe that they can have a good amount of conflict storming. And if the facilitator doesn't feel really confident and capable of holding a space for healthy, productive conflict, then the group won't do it, or they'll have unproductive conflict, and then you don't get to that state of performing. And that's where you're really humming as a group, where you've really gone through something and can people know that they can disagree and be safe in doing it and have their own perspectives. And it's a very critical part of healthy groups. Um, August, we take the month off. Then we come back to be dealing with conflict. How do you deal with conflict and disruptors of the process? And it's a great thing to really understand. Um, we'll be working on creating a container that tends to race, gender, and sexual identity. And then also developing all along the way your unique style, but we'll come into really being able to hone it and name it and claim it. So I'm not going to go too deep into the schedule, but if you are interested, I can give that to you. So in terms of if you are interested in this, if you want to become certified by the School for Sacred Storytelling, you need to attend all the classes. You can miss up to, you can make, you can miss one class and make it up with the support of your partner. Um, you will lead one solo experiential group. You'll co-facilitate. Again, you'll either facilitate two immersive workshops or be part of a five-part class. And that's all if you want to complete the certification. If you don't want to complete the certification, you don't have to do all the practicums. So it's really, you get to pick how much you do. But if you want the certification, those are all the practicums that are required. And in order to come also, you do have to take one class with me. So that Saturday class, it's the last chance to come in and take a class with me. That's the only prerequisite. So in this 8-month experience, you'll get 16 3-hour live classes. So we meet twice a month for 3 hours, 19 hours of direct experience leading. You'll experience leading in 3 different kinds of group processes. You'll have your own small group cohort that you can work with outside of class. And this is that group where you really get to have that personalized attention of setting your goals, having someone accountable, having people that you can work with, that you have your blocks. I'm always there. But this is kind of some of the magic that really makes these courses sing. And then you'll have 2 private progress reviews with myself. The tuition is $3,500, and when you pay, if this is like that this is something that you want, we can either break it up into payment plans if that's something that you need, or if you want to pay at once. When you pay $3,200, you get a $300 discount. And gosh, I'm not gonna
Oh,
read
it's
this. Is
okay.
that okay?
Sure.
What's that? You said please don't read that loud. Okay. So, and that's, these are all there, so I'll let you, I can send these along. So
So, Leah, is the content mostly your content?
yes. So, I mean, a lot of it's very universal. All the stages of development, how to form a group, like it is very universal knowledge. And a lot of it I've studied and practiced and have learned and practiced in classes. Yeah.
Mhm. So you said that you would be doing one class, but then who's doing the others?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Um, I teach all the classes.
That's a much better answer.
Yeah. I was trying to figure out what I said that made it
Oh,
sound
it doesn't matter.
it's okay. Yeah, yeah. No, I teach all the classes.
Okay,
But again, in person, given that we're not in California,
This is all an online program.
the whole thing would be online.
Whole thing's online. We have people literally all around the country and Canada that are in this course, from the East Coast to West Coast, north to south.
Hmm.
It's a small program. It's only open to 16 people. And so it's designed to be really small so you can get a lot of practice, a lot of intensive experience.
And it starts when?
It starts in June, I think June 9th. I'd have to look at that exactly.
But you have a website, so all this would be on your website.
I do have a website, and this is for some reason when we created the PowerPoint, I was like, you know what, that's enough. I don't need to put the whole thing on the website. So what I can do is I can send you the PowerPoint, which describes everything in great detail. And I can actually, you know what, I'll just give you a link to it right now.
right.
And that way you will have it. Let's see.
I'm hearing a waterfall. Is that coming from you, Leah?
It is. I have a little fountain in my office.
Mm.
There's something about having water, the sound of water in a very, very dry state that puts my nervous system at ease. So, all right. Are there any other questions for today?
Yes, I did want to inquire about teaching stories, but I know you may not be talking about that today. Would you be willing to talk about it, or can I contact you to learn about teaching stories?
We're here. I'm happy to just tell you about it.
Sure.
So, by the way, if you are interested in the facilitator training program, I would go to info@leolam.com so you can schedule yourself an interview, because that would be the next stage. And teaching stories is a class teaching stories are almost a lost art. And it's really, that entire class, it's a 4-week class, and it's designed to help you get a sense of what is it to create. You're going to learn both. You're going to learn old teachings. So you're going to learn old allegories and old teaching stories. So that's one of the really fun parts. You'll get to hear all these stories from all across time, all around the world. But then you'll also have an opportunity to learn how to tell your own and create your own teaching story. So particularly good with people that are working with youth, who are like really wanting to engage story as the extra nanny. I remember I once heard a man told an amazing story about how, I don't remember what tribe he was from, unfortunately, but he was talking about how he had this 3-year-old son, and they would be in line for food, and his son would be grabbing food off of everyone's plates, and he was so embarrassed because all he could say was, no, 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 don't do that. And he realized that he was missing something very big that had always been used in his culture, which was teaching stories. And so that night they went home and they made up a story about Good Otter and Bad Otter. And Good Otter has manners, and he asks for permission, and he says thank you, and Bad Otter runs around and grabs stuff off of people's plates and runs away. And so it gave him this piece that now when they're out in public and at home, he doesn't have to be just the only disciplinarian, right? He can actually call upon the story. So when his son's doing things, he can be like, oh, look, there's Good Otter in the room. Or he can say, oh, is that Bad Otter? And it's a whole other way of relating and working with these old stories in that way. So that's a little example of what a teaching story can look like. They take all different shapes and forms, and people in the class take them, and it's really about there might be something new specific that you really want to teach about. And a lot of times we'll use metaphor and fairy tale to do it in. So, make sense?
And
Um,
and so you have a course on this too?
yes. So what I can show you that I didn't show you before is that we have an entire program that all of this is designed around. So, um, and this program is called Speak Your Spark, and it's designed to be a program that goes around the wheel. It's kind of this amazing program. It continues on, um, and so you can come in at any time. And I won't be joining the mailing list today. But I'm just going to cruise down. We bring in over 30 guest teachers that support all the different courses. So, tomorrow we're actually having a guest teacher that you could come join, because the guest teaching classes are open to the public. Tomorrow we're working with Nicholas and the True Voice, searching for the jewel. And the way that this program is designed is that, as I was talking about, you got to keep your channel clear and clear. So we have these 6-week sanctuary modules. Right now we're in Shine, where we're working on our 3rd chakra. And this is where you get to really dive in deep and work with creative processes to look at, what in this class we're looking at, what is your block around power and purpose, and how do we clear that channel, and how do we activate it so that you also come out with your story around power and purpose. And then we'll come out, we take 2 weeks break, and then we come out and we'll be telling medicine stories next. So it's a kind of a fluky thing that I'm teaching a 1-day class this week. It's because I went to Ecuador for a month, and I had a guest teacher come in and teach the class, and I gave people the option to do the 1-day version. And so it's just a kind of a nice thing that opened that up for everyone. Then the next course that's happening in terms of that 6-week course is Unity, and that's all about the heart, stories of love of self, love of other, love of land. And we'll be coming in with some extraordinary guest teachers, Stephen Jenkinson. I don't have the whole list in front of me, but that's an amazing course. So when you come in at this point, the program is right now 50% off, because we're halfway through the program. So you still get all the recorded classes up to date, or you can continue going and take them live when they happen live next year. So that's how that is working. And I feel like I've been talking at you guys for a long time. So if you want me to continue to tell you more about the program, I can. But I also want to release you if you are complete.
I would
So,
like to know more about this program. So
okay.
where
Yeah.
can I get more information on this
Yeah.
program?
Well, if you want to stay, I'm happy to keep walking you through it and just introduce it to you. And then if, I know it's a small group, so you can feel like you have to stay. But if the rest of you are complete, I want you to know you can go on your way. Um, now
How-
this pro,
I'm going to take a 1-minute break and then I'm coming back.
okay, fair
Thank
enough. So this program, when I can share a little bit, is, and I almost can feel like it was my heart song that came out of COVID. And I've been teaching for a long time, and I love teaching with other people because there's so many ways into story, and the more perspectives, the richer our collective experience. So I've always loved bringing in guest teachers. What I've discovered along the way, though, is that people weren't getting to that place where we were leaving the concept of it and they were getting into the embodiment of their story. And I realized we actually had to get in there and really start engaging the mind, body, and the spirit. And so this program does that. We get in there with a mind where we understand our stories, but we also do rituals. We also work with creating sacred space. We also work with other teachers, and we also work with earth-based rituals, and we also work with a lot of different kinds of creative processes. And then we also work with our stories. So it's designed to be pretty holistic in that form. So, like for example, in Shine, and if you wanted to jump in, you're like, wow, I really want to be in Shine. You could jump in. We just had our second class. I don't normally let people do that, but sorry. Um, I I can, if you're interested, I can go back and show you that class.
Yeah, yeah, I'd like to see it.
Okay, let me come back to well, here. Sorry, I'll go down here where it's linked. So what you're seeing here is after this class, we'll take a 2-week break, then we'll go on to medicine stories. And these are stories that are designed just really for your own self-healing. So you'll get an opportunity to go dive into something that is very unresolved. It's the only class like this where it's something that's completely unresolved, and and you'll get to really learn how to bring medicine and healing to this. Then we take a 2-week break, or we take the month of August off actually. We come back for unity. And unity is of the heart. So we really look at how do we clear this heart channel? How do we get full access to it? How do we remove all the blocks and barriers so that we can come into really giving our gifts, really giving our love through our stories and through the stories that we tell. Then we'll do teaching stories. Then we'll come speak your spark. It's all about the fifth chakra, and how are you using your voice for the things that you're passionate about and you really care about. We'll come into vision stories. This is a unique kind of story that I have a very specific style for creating, where we really get to consider how do we plant really positive visions of the future. And then we end with Cantadora, which is the ancient stories, the old stories. How do we carry forth these old stories in a good way? The program includes so at this point you get recordings, but it's the ones that you've missed, which is 3 classes. But there's 5 unique 6-week sanctuary self-exploration courses. Then there's the 6 4-week storytelling skill building modules. So each of those you come out with one really solid story that you can sharing and telling. We do 5 full day story ceremonies, which I'm going to, a little bit further down, I'll explain to you what those are. We bring in over 35 guest master teachers. And one of the fun parts of this is that you have your own group of greatness. This is a peer group that you can meet with outside of class if you want to. You don't have to, but I think it's a really wonderful aspect. And then we also have a members only online community. And so this is where it's sort of like our own private Facebook world, where you also have a weekly writing group that you can come join if you want. There's a open community mentorship, so everyone can come together if they're tending to something or want to work with something. We also have a book writing club. So this part I'll let you kind of go into the details of, this, really it's like, it's designed for people who really understand that. For me, it's like that story is a way into expressing the greatest part of our humanity. And for people who really want to show up in these times, people who really want to like assert their capacity for exceptional communication, for people who really want to clear the channel and remove all the psychic blocks and get full access to their life force. That's a lot of what we're doing in this space. You'll also get to communicate more effectively in your personal life and in your professional life. It's gonna start, being woven in. You'll deepen and broaden your creative capacity, in all aspects of it. And really, it's about improving your self confidence, and because you'll have an opportunity to be in front of people and to share your stories and to amplify and embrace your gifts. So that's, and the other part that I'll just share with you is that we have these storytelling ceremonies. And this is a very unique aspect of the program and what I offer, which is this place of like, how do we come into this full field of group healing, of healing the times that we're living in. And so, for example, we have the story of the Love Maker, which is coming up. I think that date is wrong, but we need to change that date. And this is a story about love of life, love of healing, love of life, love, love of self, love of other, and where is our energy get stuck. And so we get to come in, and it's a very old way of being in relationship to old stories. And so you get to be in a group field of carrying an old story while doing ritual for yourself and really exploring your own relationship with inside of it in community. It's hard to explain, but it's really fun. Here's some pictures of times that we've done this in the past. So that's that program, and let me take you to Shine. Let's get you to Shine.
What is the cost of that program?
It's $2,500. So when we first started, it was $5,000, but because now you're getting recordings of some of them, it's $2,500. Sorry, let me stop spinning this for a second and just get you to the Shine page, so that
Is that something we can get online or we can see online?
yeah.
Again, is that,
I'll
sorry?
I'll pull it up for you right now, so that way you can have the link. I found that so many of our emails are ending up in spam these days that I just have found giving people the links right here, so you can have them if you want them. And then here is so if you feel inspired, I don't usually do this, but you can jump in. You'd have to watch 2 classes, and but you could slip right in, and we would get you into a group immediately. And this is the class that's happening right now, and I love this class. It's really something special. So this is really about getting full access to your power and purpose. We've been in a deep question these last 2 weeks about like, what is power, and how is it being lived through us, and what is it to be in relationship in a good, clear way, and how do we reclaim this word in a way that we can fully align to, so that we can fully align to our life force. We have had Nima was our guest teacher last week. It was really beautiful. This week we're going to have Nicholas. So these folks are augmenting the material, and then a lot of what we're doing is we're doing this deep dive into right now. Like, you would create a story map, and you would have an opportunity to really look at where were you initiated by life, where you were in relationship with power, out of relationship with power, it was taken from you, and we go through and we look at all these places, and then we start working with a creative process to basically align the energy in your life now so you can be in full access. And you'll get to come out and tell the story. Um, so that's a little bit. And then this class is part of a sanctuary course. So sanctuary courses, what they do is it's exactly this. It's like imagine if Marie Kondo meets the artist's way, and so you have an opportunity to also create space in your physical home as you really explore who you are as a conscious creator, and in doing that, you get to really see where are your blocks in your creation process, where are your strengths, and it will actually it's like another modality. We have our astrology, the human design, the gene keys. We have all of these. This is the creator matrix, where it really focuses on who you are as a creator and what you came to create. So that's a little bit of shine. So, okay. You guys are marathoners.
We're just making sure you're on your toes,
Oh, you really are. um, well, what a pleasure to be with you. Are there any other questions that you have?
I just heard about you yesterday.